An English school teacher finds a computer that writes messages from the 1500s claiming contact with a man from 2109. A British Royal Air Force officer flies over an abandoned airfield in 1935 and sees it fully operational decades before it should exist. And a man warns of a future collapse in what he calls secret time authorities, claiming he's already lived centuries ahead of us. These are more people who claimed they were from the future. I cannot believe I've been doing videos on this channel as long as I have, and have not come across this first story until today. This is the tale of the Dawdleston Messages. In 1984, in a small English village called Dawston, a teacher named Ken Webster was fixing up a dusty old cottage with his girlfriend Debbie and their long-term guest Nicola. While working, they noticed something odd. There were 6-toed footprints. None of these people had 6 toes, in case that needed clarifying. And then more and more weird stuff kept happening at the cottage. They'd find icy cold spots. They'd see strange shadows everywhere. Your typical paranormal type activity. Ken also had a BBC microcomputer, an early 80s home computer that wasn't even connected to the internet or any network. But one day, a message popped up on the screen. It was a poem, creepy and cryptic, talking about nightmares and decaying flowers. Over time, Ken realized they were supposedly coming from someone who lived in the same cottage, but in the 1500s. LW, he said his name was, and then he revealed his true name to be Thomas Harden, claiming he was being accused of witchcraft in his time and had lost his land. Thomas was just as confused as Ken was. He said he'd been communicating through a strange box of lights that appeared in his home, which he believed was some kind of magic. That box was likely referring to Ken's computer, meaning both men were somehow using the same object to send messages across centuries. And then things got even stranger. Another mysterious person started sending messages too, supposedly from the year 2109. This future group claimed they were monitoring both Ken and Thomas as part of an experiment to study how time interacts. Back in 1935, a British Royal Air Force officer named Victor Goddard was flying a biplane over an old abandoned airfield near Edinburgh. The place was basically falling apart. Overgrown, crumbling buildings, there were no planes, no people. A few days later, he flew the same route again. As he got close to the airfield, a sudden storm kicked up. Just as quickly as it started though, the sky cleared, and what he saw made zero sense. The airfield wasn't abandoned anymore. Buildings had been fixed up, freshly painted as well. Planes were sitting on the tarmac, painted bright yellow, which wasn't even a color the Air Force was using yet. Mechanics were in blue overalls, moving around, working on the planes. Goddard was shaken, but he reported what he saw. Most people thought he'd misremembered or gotten confused, but then World War II rolled around. And wouldn't you know it, that same airfield was rebuilt exactly as he'd seen it years before. There were yellow planes, blue overalled mechanics, everything lined up perfectly. Goddard wasn't some conspiracy theorist either. He rose to Air Marshal, one of the top brass in the Royal Air Force, and he stuck to his story till the day he died. Dziga Vertov, or just Vertov, claims he's one of the first time travelers ever caught on camera. Back in 2014, he gave a YouTube interview where he shared all this stuff about the future. He said there's a kind of authority that controls both time travelers and regular people, making sure nobody messes with history. According to him, they can erase memories or trap someone in what he calls a perpetual cell, while a clone takes their place. So Vertov said he took a huge risk just doing this interview, warning that future generations are facing a major collapse. Society will fall apart, money will vanish, but that eventually humans will rebuild. The interviewer was, understandably, pretty skeptical, especially since Vertov refused to show any proof. He didn't take the doubt well and walked off the set, possibly even walked off this plane of time, never to return. Reddit user Albert Norman 2069 shared a wild story about what he thinks was a brief trip into an alternate timeline. He says it happened on June 28th, 2014. His day started normally, waking up, brushing his teeth, eating breakfast, and getting in the car for work. But when he switched on the radio, things suddenly got strange. Instead of his usual music station, there was a news talk show playing. The host was talking about a recent victory in the Great War. praising troops in the military. At first, Albert figured it was just about the ongoing withdrawal from Afghanistan, but then the host started talking about a victory in Italy and how this win would finally end a second Great Depression. He was kind of confused, but figured it was just a radio play or something, so he just kind of brushed it all off. This wasn't the last he'd heard of this, though. Later during lunch, Albert overheard coworkers chatting about that same victory in Italy and something about preserving unity. They also kept repeating the numbers 33-13. Finally, he was like, all right, what's going on here? So he asked, what the hell they were talking about, and they looked at him all offended and basically told him that his question was disrespectful to the troops. That's when Albert noticed a coworker named Sam was missing. But disturbingly, when he asked about him, nobody seemed to know who Sam was at all. On his way home, Albert took a different route through the city, and things just got more unsettling. He noticed there were these banners celebrating the victory, showing Marines landing on a foreign beach. The city also looked way poorer than he remembered. There were abandoned storefronts. Some buildings actually looked like they were crumbling. At home, he turned on CNN, and the anchors were discussing how American forces had defeated Italian logistical targets with minimal civilian casualties, how insurgencies in Greece and Ireland were winding down. At this point, Albert was kind of getting terrified. He had no idea what was going on. Was he losing his mind? Was this a bad dream? Well, he did what anyone would do. He went straight to Wikipedia. That's when he found a detailed page about a war he'd never heard of. It said Europe had collapsed into a civil war with Greece and Ireland occupied by coalition forces facing nationalist insurgencies, that the US was deep in a depression, and the global financial system was in chaos. Albert took screenshots of the pages. After he woke up, those pictures were still on his phone. Yes, he shared them on a Reddit post. This experience led him to wonder about parallel universes, pointing to the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. The idea that every decision creates a split, a different timeline. So Albert thinks somehow, just for a day, he slipped into one of those darker alternate realities. 6 years ago, Reddit user Peeny Bino shared a pretty unsettling experience. She was driving to work, stopped in a left turn lane when a car pulled up behind her. Out of nowhere, this intense cold fear hit her. It was like she just knew the car was going to crash into them. The car behind stopped gently a few yards back, but the fear didn't go away. Then things got even weirder. She felt this sudden jolt through her body, so strong it felt like the car actually moved with her. Checking the rear mirror, the other car was still there. The light turned green, and just before she took her foot off the brake, an excruciating pain exploded in her neck and head. She also noticed a strong smell and a taste of gasoline. It was overwhelming. She slowly rolled down the window, moved through the intersection, and gave an apologetic wave to the driver behind her. Pino Bino pulled into the office parking lot, trembling. The pain and gasoline smell, they eventually went away, but she was still shaken for the rest of the day. She even felt afraid to get back into the car at the end of the day. She called her fiancé, who joked, "Maybe you died in a car accident in an alternate universe and you felt it." Pino Bino just laughed that off at the time, but says she hasn't been able to shake that idea since. Years ago, a now deleted Reddit user shared a haunting story in an Ask Reddit thread about feeling a deep connection to someone they met in a dream. He explained that during his last semester at college, he was tackled by a massive football player, 325 pounds compared to his 120. He was unconscious for a little bit, but ended up being okay. He met an amazing woman, and after months of chasing her and dealing with a few jerk boyfriends, they ended up getting married. Soon after, they had a daughter. He had a good job, his wife stayed home to take care of the kid, and when their daughter was 2, they had a son. Life was almost picture perfect, but one day, while sitting on the couch, he noticed something off about a lamp in his room. Its perspective was inverted, like it was 3D, but just wrong. He couldn't look away, staying up all night staring at it. The next morning, he didn't go to work. Over the next few days, he stopped eating and barely left the couch, completely fixated on this lamp. His wife started getting worried, called someone to talk to him, but he knew something was really wrong here. It was like his mind was unraveling. Eventually, he had an epiphany. That lamp wasn't real. Neither was his house, the wife, the kids, or the last 10 years of his life. That's when the lamp grew bigger in his vision, turning everything red while he heard screams and felt intense pain. And he suddenly woke up, lying on the sidewalk, surrounded by strangers. He was still on the ground, just having come back to from being tackled by the football player. In the brief time he'd been unconscious, he'd imagined an entire life. But it felt very real to him, too real. In his own words, "I went through about 3 years of horrid depression. I was grieving the loss of my wife and children, dealing with the knowledge that they never existed. I was scared that I was going insane, as I would cry myself to sleep hoping I would see her in my dreams. I never have, but sometimes I see my son, usually just a glimpse out of my peripheral vision. He's perpetually 5 years old, and I can never hear what he says." This next story comes from Gunzo, who said he once dreamed he was driving home, listening to old music, when he spotted a badly damaged car on the side of the road. He stops, calls for help, and finds an unconscious young woman with short curly blonde hair inside. Drags her out, gives her first aid, until an ambulance arrives. When he glanced back at the woman though, she was suddenly wide awake and shocked, and that's when he woke up. Well, weeks go by, and his uncle gives him a family photo collage for his birthday. Among the pictures was his mom, young, pregnant at the time. She was also covered in scars. In fact, she looked exactly like the woman from his dream. When he told his dad about this, his dad said, well, a man rescued his mom after a car accident 25 years earlier, and then mysteriously vanished. Redditor this_IUS shared a strange story about his friend Gavin, who he said was incredibly smart, like higher IQ than anyone he knew. This happened when they were teens. One day, the Reddit user made an impromptu stop at Gavin's place. He knocked on the door and was shocked when a middle-aged man answered. It was not Gavin's dad. And things only got stranger. When he asked if Gavin was home, the man said, "I am Gavin." The man looked very confused. After some back and forth, the man was like, "Okay, yeah, he'll be back later." It seemed he just wanted to be left alone. Well, later, when the Redditor told Gavin about this, Gavin insisted no one else had been there, and he'd been home the whole time, too. This led to a theory. Had that middle-aged man actually been Gavin, a future version of him that had somehow, briefly, slipped back in time? A TikToker named Kilmaru started uploading videos over 2 years ago, with his first video captioned, "I am very scared." In it, he's filming from his hotel window, looking out at a city street in broad daylight, and there's no one there. Then he walks outside. Restaurants, supermarkets, even a McDonald's, all stocked like normal, but it's completely silent. Since then, he's posted hundreds of videos from places that are normally crammed with tourists: the Leaning Tower of Pisa, the streets of London, amusement parks, the New York City subway, all empty. He claims that he slipped into another dimension, an eerily empty alternate reality version of Earth. His followers throw him challenges, telling him to visit specific spots to prove he's really alone, but every time, it's just him on camera. One of the craziest updates came when someone told him to go to Berlin airport to try and escape. He says he fell asleep in the lounge, then woke up on a massive ship at sea. For 6 days, he explored it before jumping into a lifeboat and making it back to land. And just like that, he was back to wandering through a perfectly normal-looking world where he's apparently the only person alive. Now, of course, I don't know whether you believe in the alternate reality thing or not, but it is impressive that he's managed to film so many iconic locations with no one else in frame. I don't know if he just happens to find super specific times, maybe there's some editing trickery going on, but I think this is an interesting little art project aside from the mystery. Reddit user 17DemonDickS's shared a creepy story with the heading, "I think I stepped into a parallel universe for a moment." They were about 18 or 19 at the time, still living in their childhood home. It was summer, early afternoon, and they were heading out for one of their usual walks to a nearby park. Something they'd done almost every day for years. They slipped on their shoes, opened the front door, and stepped outside, and instantly knew that something was off. Nothing looked different. The ravine next to the house, the tree in the yard, the driveway, the neighbors' homes, everything was exactly where it should be, but everything just felt inexplicably wrong. The Redditor said it was like reality itself had shifted in some subtle but deeply unsettling way. They stood there for a moment trying to shake off the feeling before heading down the driveway. About halfway down, they spotted their neighbor across the street tending to his garden. The neighbor looked up, froze. His face went completely pale, like he'd just seen a ghost. The neighbor slowly opened his mouth, about to say something with this look of terror on his face, but before the Redditor could respond, they were back inside the house, standing at the front door again, hand on the handle, about to step out. This time though, when they opened the door, the neighborhood felt completely normal again. The neighbor wasn't even outside anymore. Demon D's decided to skip the walk that day. Years later, they still can't explain the feeling. The thing that bothers them the most isn't even the sudden teleportation or the neighbor's terrified expression. It was indescribable wrongness, like they were looking at a completely different version of their own street. Charlotte Ann Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain were English academics who, in August of 1901, took a trip to the Palace of Versailles in France. After touring the main palace, they decided to walk through the gardens where Marie Antoinette used to hang out. They got lost and missed the turn from the main avenue, ending up on a quiet lane. Moberly noticed a woman shaking a white cloth out of the window, while Jourdain saw an old deserted farmhouse with a plow outside. That's when they started to notice this heavy, oppressive feeling wash over them. Moberly later described it as if, quote, everything suddenly looked unnatural, therefore unpleasant. Even the trees seemed to become flat and lifeless, like wood worked in tapestry, end quote. Then they came across two men who looked like gardeners but wore long coats and three-cornered hats, very old-timey clothing, even for 1901. Close by, a man sat near a garden kiosk, his face covered in smallpox. As they finally crossed the bridge into the gardens, Moberly spotted a woman sketching on the grass. The lady wore a light summer dress and a white hat. Her hair was old-fashioned. Moberly thought she was a tourist at first, but later became convinced that what they'd both seen was Marie Antoinette herself. Neither mentioned what happened for a week, but after comparing notes and researching some of the history of the place, they believed they had somehow stepped back to August 10th of 1792, just weeks before the French monarchy was overthrown. The story blew up when they published it in 1911 under fake names in their book, An Adventure. Years later, they found an old map that showed the bridge they said they crossed, and that bridge wasn't on any newer maps, cause it no longer existed. It hadn't for a long time. To this day, this is still one of the most famous and well-documented time-slip stories in existence. This is Zlata, one of the most flexible women in the world. Zlata, whose real name is Julia Guntel, is a world-famous contortionist known for doing things with her body that most of us can't even imagine, let alone attempt. I can barely get through a night of sleep without my shoulders and my back hurting. I can't even imagine doing stuff like this. She was born in Kazakhstan and raised in Germany. She started out as a gymnast before realizing she had an extreme level of flexibility that went way beyond the norm. Poses where she basically turns herself into a human knot. She's been performing since she was a teenager and eventually earned the nickname Zlata, which means golden in Russian, fitting considering she's held multiple world records. Her spine is so flexible that she's able to rotate her upper body 180 degrees. A lot of her poses just look like they've been photoshopped. Not the case though. Zlata's appeared on TV shows and live circus acts and in lots of photo shoots that really show off her insane flexibility. Isao Machi is this martial artist from Japan who's just on a whole different level with the katana. He practices Iaido, an old school samurai art where you draw and strike in one smooth motion, but what sets him apart is how freakishly fast and precise he is. One of the wildest things he can do is slice a BB pellet in half in mid-air. So here, watch this.
I heard it.
So that's a tiny plastic ball fired from an airsoft at crazy speed, and this guy draws his katana from the sheath and cuts it clean through as it's flying at him. That's not just impressive, that is full-on real-life anime stuff. And just to drive it home, most people wouldn't even be able to see a BB pellet flying through the air, let alone react fast enough to hit it with a blade. Incredible. And now for a different kind of movement, straight up flying. This is a rather famous piece of footage that's been circulating online for years. Apparently this was filmed in a forest somewhere in Russia. The camera person's dog seems disturbed by something and runs off ahead. When the cameraman steps into a clearing, we see something completely unexpected. A woman is standing on the ground looking up at a young girl who's just hovering in the air. Soon they realize they're being filmed and they rush off back into the forest. This video falls firmly into that mysterious internet video category. There's not a lot of information about it. It was posted back in 2012 and went viral. There's not a whole lot of information on it. This was filmed at the pedestrian bridge in Kiev, not exactly where you'd expect to see Spider-Man hanging out, but apparently he was. Looks a lot like Spider-Man to me anyway. I don't know how you guys feel. And there's anything we know about Spider-Man though, it's that he does not move like a normal person. So why is this person crawling along this bridge? It seems pretty risky. The water down there doesn't look deep at all, so if they slipped, it wasn't gonna end well. Unless they've got actual web-slinging powers, a fall from that height could do real damage. So who is this? Some adrenaline junkie? Someone who's just lost it completely? I have no idea. I'm just kind of hoping it really is Spider-Man. This is a weird one. A man completely frozen in place in the middle of the street. Again, no real info on this one. It just is what it is. Weird. And no, we have not paused the clip. This is the footage. What's nuts about this one isn't just that the guy is frozen in place. He's like mid-stride. He looks like an NPC glitching in a video game instead of someone just standing really still. I can't see any movement from this guy. No twitching, like no subtle movement of any kind. It's pretty impressive, honestly. Any thoughts on this one? Share your thoughts down below. And finally, we have this mysterious piece of footage. Look, hospitals are already the last place I want to be. Aside from like waking up buried alive in a coffin or in a burlap sack in the lake, still, hospital's not where I want to be. So seeing this would just make things all the more uncomfortable for me. Probably not as uncomfortable as her, because her back looks like it's about to snap, but I'd be pretty freaked out. So when I first saw this clip, I thought it was AI. This is Kid Strobe, aka Frenchie Baby, a dancer who can obviously move in freaky ways. He's known for having the most flexible arms in the world. Frenchie Baby started bone breaking and turfing when he was a teenager. Turfing is a style of dance that began in Oakland, California. It's all about storytelling through movement. Kid Strobe and his friends would perform on public transit to earn money and stay involved in the dance world. Frenchie Baby's extreme flexibility has led to a lot of big opportunities. He's been featured in music videos. He's appeared on shows like Romania's Got Talent, where he got the golden buzzer, America's Got Talent, So You Think You Can Dance, The Ellen Show, and Jimmy Kimmel Live. So you ever seen anything like this before? Yeah, I have not either. That is crazy. So this is Gary Turner, aka Stretch. Obviously his skin is incredibly stretchy. He holds the Guinness World Record for the stretchiest skin on the planet thanks to a rare condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It affects the body's connective tissue, making his skin super stretchy without it tearing. He can pull the skin on his stomach more than 6 inches away from his body. It's very surreal to watch. Gary's been showing off his bizarre talent for years, performing all over the world and even joining sideshows like the Circus of Horrors and Ripley's Believe It or Not. He's pulled off some seriously wild stunts on stage, like stretching his neck skin over his face like you just saw, or using his skin as a drink holder. It's freaky, sure, but also oddly fascinating? I don't know how to describe it. It's really weird. Beyond the shock factor though, Gary's used his condition to educate people about Ehlers-Danlos and raise awareness. Ever looked at a tennis racket and thought to yourself, yeah, I could probably squeeze my whole body into that? Well, this next guy has. This is Daniel Browning Smith, aka Rubber Boy. Wonder how he got that name. He's hands down one of the most flexible people to ever walk the planet. He's a contortionist, actor, stuntman, TV host, all-around performer who holds 7 Guinness World Records for his flexibility. His body moves in ways that just don't seem possible. That's because he has a rare genetic condition called hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which gives his joints and skin an extreme level of stretch and bend that most people could just never pull off. Daniel grew up in Meridian, Mississippi with a brother and sister. From the time he was 4, he was obsessed with contortionists and dreamed of becoming the best in the world. His first trick was jumping off the top bunk of his bed and landing in a full straddle split, which, yeah, shocked the hell out of his family. As a teen, he started doing street performances to show his flexibility and get noticed. When he turned 18, he joined the circus and then started formal training under Master Lu Yi at the San Francisco School of Circus Arts. And from there, things took off and Rubber Boy became one of the most well-known contortionists in the world. If you're a horror movie fan, there's a good chance you've seen this next guy and you just didn't know it. He's been playing zombies and other creatures since 2016. Troy James is a contortionist and actor who's built a reputation for moving like something straight out of one of your worst nightmares, in the best way possible though. He's known for his freaky fast exorcist crab walk, crazy backbends. A lot of people first saw him on America's Got Talent, where he bent himself into shapes that had the judges squirming in their seats, but before that, he was already acting in horror movies. Troy is from Canada and actually worked a regular office job before going full-time into contortion and acting. What makes him stand out isn't just how flexible he is, but how he uses that flexibility. He embodies these freaky, inhuman creatures. If you've ever seen The Void, Channel Zero, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, Rabbit, the Chucky TV series, you've seen him in action. I love it. No CGI needed. That's just all him. We need more of that in modern movies. They claimed to access these memories through clairvoyant visions during meditation. Besant believed these lives were real, and that our souls were on a long journey of spiritual development that spanned across the universe. You might think only a handful of fringe folks claim to be from space. The modern starseed community is bigger than you'd think, with thousands of people worldwide saying their soul came from another star system. Sirius, Arcturus, Orion, the Pleiades, take your pick. According to this belief, these people incarnated on Earth to raise humanity's vibration, awake the masses, stop the apocalypse, or something equally vague but noble sounding. A lot of them say they feel homesick for a place they've never physically been. The whole movement exploded on forums like YouTube and TikTok, with people making videos like 10 signs you're a starseed, please let's not make that video, or why you never felt at home on Earth. It's become a full-on identity for some people. There are starseed coaches, starseed retreats, and a lot of it overlaps with things like crystal healing and what's called light language. Don't ask. Please don't ask, because I don't know. Bruce Allen Walton, better known by his pen name Brenton, claimed he had memories from past lives on Sirius, the star system, not the satellite radio. He wrote a bunch of conspiracy-heavy documents in the 90s, mixing UFO sightings, underground alien bases, reptilian plots, government cover-ups, all your usual hits. This one's great. Reality of the Serpent Race and the Subterranean Origin of UFOs. Look at that book cover. And I love how at the bottom left corner it says confidential monograph for your eyes only. And everyone else who buys the Kindle edition on Amazon for $9. His books were popular in UFO conspiracy circles for a while, even though they were hard to follow and kind of all over the place. He talked about secret wars between different alien species, human-alien hybrids, and a hidden network of tunnels under Earth where dark stuff was going on. And hey, I love all those ideas, I just don't really subscribe to the idea that it's all real. But I guess, who knows? Dolores Cannon was a hypnotherapist who started out doing regular past life regression, like helping people figure out if they were a Victorian chimney sweep in the past life or whatever. But things took a weird turn when her clients started describing lives that weren't just from different time periods, they were from other planets entirely. Under hypnosis, people claimed they had agreed to be born on Earth as part of some larger mission, and that they'd lived elsewhere before coming here. Some described alien worlds in detail, including their advanced technology and the training that they received before being born. And as crazy as it all sounded, Cannon didn't dismiss any of it. She wrote it all down and published book after book filled with these sessions. She thought her clients were tapping into real memories. Back in 1956, a weird UFO story started playing out near Pescara, Italy. Except this one didn't just involve strange lights in the sky, it went way, way further. A guy named Bruno Samasicia claimed he and dozens of others were regularly meeting with a group of human-looking aliens called the W56, or the W56. Some were really short, others were over 8 feet tall, and they apparently had bases hidden underground all over Italy. The story didn't go public until Stefano Brescia, an engineer and researcher, dug into it decades later and published interviews with the people involved. According to them, these aliens were showing up for years. They were asking for help, like getting shipments of fruit or weird industrial stuff like strontium and barium nitrate. Sometimes the humans would make deliveries and the stuff would just vanish instantly, like it got teleported. There were even claims that aliens built their underground bases by flipping a switch that compressed the Earth, then closed it back up after they were done. I don't know. And here's a strange one, as if this list hasn't been strange enough already. Instead of aliens from another world, some people say there's already a group of humans living in space. This is known as the breakaway civilization theory, which claims that since at least the 60s or 70s, a hidden society of humans has been secretly building bases on the moon, Mars, and maybe even further out. They're just living out there. Some whistleblowers, like former defense contractors and insiders, say this group controls top secret black budget programs, flying advanced spacecraft that most people don't even know exist. They allegedly created space colonies and mining operations totally cut off from the public and even most governments. Some theories say they've been using alien technology recovered from crashed UFOs, which helped them leapfrog decades ahead. Now, it all sounds very comic booky, but there are people who really believe this is a thing. Some even claim to be whistleblowers that worked on these secret projects. Billy Mayer is a one-armed Swiss guy who says he isn't from Earth, that he's originally from a distant star system called the Pleiades, which is a group of stars about 400 light years away. He claims that since he was a kid in the 40s, he's been in direct contact with humanoid aliens from there. He says they started teaching him things, showing him the future, and eventually taking him on their ships. One of the aliens, a woman named Samjassi or Samjas, supposedly visited him a number of times and gave him messages to pass on to humanity. And he shared a lot of these messages in the form of strange recordings he claims to come from space. He's shown weird metal samples, and he also has tons of photos and footage of supposed flying saucers. Now, the photos and footage have become a bit of a problem. A lot of people say they looked fake, like models hanging from strings. Even his ex-wife said that he made them in the kitchen. So anyway, he did end up finding his own UFO group, and he's stuck with his story, saying that he was chosen by these alien beings to help guide Earth into spiritual enlightenment. That's going to come up a lot in this video, by the way. Alex Collier is a former US Army pilot who says he's not just in contact with aliens, that he is one, at least on a soul level. He claims his soul came from the Andromeda galaxy and that he was sent here to help wake people up. He says he's been in contact with 2 tall blue aliens since he was a kid, and that they've been feeding him information about what's really going on with Earth, like how we're being manipulated by dark forces and how we're totally screwing up our future if we don't change our course soon. He also says he spent 92 days aboard one of their ships. He's been sharing this stuff since the 90s, doing talks, writing books, and he's got a loyal group of people who believe that he is telling the truth. Again, he's not just saying aliens talked to him, he's saying he is one, at least his soul is. In his words, he's a starseed, meaning he reincarnated here from another galaxy with a mission to help humans evolve. Barbara Marciniak says she's got alien roots, specifically from a group of stars again called the Pleiades, same star system Billy Mayer hails from. She started channeling beings from there in the late 80s and says they talk through her during trance sessions, sharing messages about spiritual awakening, energy shifts, and why humanity needs to get its act together. All the usual stuff. Do these aliens have anything more, interesting to share with us than how garbage we are as a species? Like, do we need to hear that from these people? I think we kind of know what's going on. Anyway, her most famous book, Bringers of the Dawn, is basically a big Q&A with the Pleiadians, and it became a hit in the New Age scene. She also calls herself a starseed, meaning she believes her soul didn't start out on Earth. Her followers believe she's part of a larger plan to help Earth ascend or evolve or something along those lines. It's kind of vague, but she's been sticking to this message for decades, and she's built an entire career around it. And now I have one talking about people like her. Is this a career? I don't really think this is a career. It's a job. In the 70s, authors Sheila Ostrander and Lynn Schroeder started interviewing people, mostly kids, who claimed they weren't from Earth. These weren't abduction stories, these were kids saying they actually came from other planets. Some talked about living on Sirius or Orion in a past life, others said Earth was part of a mission, and they were sent here on purpose like some kind of alien exchange program. They described their home planets in weird detail, going into how society worked and what kind of technology they used. They also said Earth felt foreign to them. Yeah, Earth feels pretty foreign to me lately too. They didn't understand human behavior. Neither do I sometimes. They had trouble fitting in, check, and sometimes they even remembered training before incarnating here. And now you're kind of losing me. Ostrander and Schroeder documented the stories and saw it as part of a growing trend of people who felt Earth wasn't their real home. Today, this idea lives on in the modern starseed movement, but back then, this was kind of new territory. Annie Besant was a spiritual teacher and writer in the early 1900s who believed she'd lived on other planets before being born on Earth. She thought souls didn't just reincarnate through different lives here on Earth, but that they moved through different planets and even different star systems. She co-wrote a book called Man, Whence, How, and Whither with C.W. Leadbeater, where they described people's supposed past lives, not just in ancient civilizations, but also on planets like Mercury and Venus. This was before we knew Venus is hot enough to melt lead, so the idea of anyone casually living there wasn't quite as ridiculous to them as it sounds now. Keyword there being not quite as ridiculous.
This next story was posted to Reddit's r/no-sleep thread and tells of a college student who agreed to an arranged marriage with a deceased bride. After being offered a large sum of money that would cover his tuition and then some, Jin agreed to be married to a deceased woman in a Chinese wedding ceremony so that she would not carry the burden of being unwed into the afterlife. In a traditional ceremony, he married a bamboo effigy of his bride dressed in a traditional red wedding gown. After the ceremony ended, Jin returned to his life, but it wasn't long before strange things started happening. Objects started disappearing and showing up in weird places, and Jin often experienced chills and the feeling of being watched in the night. Eventually, his ghost bride appeared to him with pale skin stretched across her frail bones and a soulless anger towards the young man. Jin said that he did everything he could think of to appease the woman's spirit, and eventually the hauntings did stop. That was until he fell in love with another woman named Mia. Once again, the young man's ghost bride began to appear, demanding fidelity from Jin. Eventually, Jin confided to Mia about the marriage and the problems he'd faced ever since, and the two decided to run away together. Jin's story ends on the road. While driving away with Mia, he received a phone call from the police that a body was discovered in Mia's apartment. But all of a sudden, the woman he was looking at appeared pale, with skin that seemed to be stretching across brittle bones. I have goosebumps. Alright, moving on to a man named Cheng who married a Barbie doll that he believed to contain his late wife's spirit. When Cheng first married his wife Tsai in 1979, his family did not approve, and as a result, Tsai eventually took her own life in shame. Cheng did eventually remarry, but was never able to shake the feeling that his late wife's spirit was not at peace. And so in 1999, he decided to marry a Barbie doll, hoping it would allow Tsai's spirit to finally rest. The ceremony took place in a Buddhist temple. The Barbie was dressed in a traditional wedding gown, and this time around, Cheng's family blessed the marriage and asked Tsai's spirit to forgive them for their initial disapproval of the union. During the ceremony, Cheng burned a paper model of the red Mercedes given to him as a dowry during his first marriage so that Tsai may use the vehicle in the spirit world. After Cheng and Tsai tied the knot for the second time, Cheng returned home to his second wife, along with the Barbie doll and Tsai's ashes. According to Chinese tradition, which recognizes the union of spirits and the living, Tsai will now forever be considered a member of the Cheng family. Next on our list today, and starting off our top 3, we have a woman named Amethyst Realm. Yes, Amethyst Realm, who claims to have fallen in love with an ancient and very wise ghost. While we never caught the name, Amethyst claims to have met her lover while away on business after ending things with a previous fling who was also a ghost. In fact, Amethyst admitted to having 20 paranormal lovers throughout her lifetime. She met her current love during the summer of 2018 while walking through nature, and after a whirlwind romance, Amethyst boarded a plane back to England, saddened at the idea that she may never again feel the presence of her new love. But to her surprise, she could still feel him after getting on the plane. About halfway through the flight, the pair were apparently feeling pretty hot and heavy and decided to slip off to the bathroom, where Amethyst claims they both became members of the Mile High Club. Later that year, the two became engaged when Amethyst for the first time heard her lover speak out loud, asking if she would be his bride while on a trip to the Wookey Hole Caves in England. It seems Amethyst's days of serial spiritual dating are over, as she now claims to be a one-ghoul gal. Alright, for these last two, we are going to move away from ghosts and just get downright weird. Although I suppose no more weird than joining the ghost version of the Mile High Club, but still. This is the story of Neen and Cell 9000. Can you guess which one is a real person and which is a character from a video game? I'm gonna go ahead and assume you said Neen was the real person, in which case you'd be wrong. Cell 9000 is the username of a man who in 2009 married Neen, a Japanese video game avatar from Love Plus, which is a dating simulation game played on the Nintendo DS. After just 3 months of dating, Sal decided to take the next step and ask Neen to be his wife, but they didn't get married in the game. Nope, in a real-life ceremony, Sal married Neen and vowed to love her until death parted the pair. The wedding was attended by friends and live-streamed online. When asked about the marriage, Sal simply stated that the female avatar was his ideal woman, far better than any human girlfriend he would ever find, not easy to anger but certainly quick to forgive. And I'm sure the two lived happily ever after, until his DS died that is, but hey, you win some, you lose some, right? And finally, to finish off our list today, we have the story of Jody Rose, who entered into possibly one of the most stable marriages known to date. And by that I mean, in 2013, Jody ceremoniously married Le Pont du Diable, aka Devil's Bridge, a staple of southern France that dates all the way back to 1321. Mrs. Diable said she met the bridge while traveling the world working on a project called Singing Bridges, which involved recording the vibrations on various bridge cables so that the sounds may be used to create music. Jody says that what drew her to this particular bridge was that it made her feel connected to the earth, describing the structure as fixed and stable and appreciating her betrothed's ability to always provide her with a safe place to rest while never trying to stop her from heading back out on the road. First on our list today, we have British singer Bacardi, who married and subsequently divorced Eduardo, a devilishly handsome Victorian-era soldier who was, well, dead. Bacardi claims that she met the ghost of a man after he burst into her bedroom one night during a thunderstorm. The two fell in love and were married on Halloween of 2022, however, unfortunately for the singer, it didn't take her long to realize that marital problems are not solely reserved for the living. Apparently soon after the pair had exchanged nuptials, Edward's demeanor began to change. He became possessive of Bacardi and would often taunt her with the sounds of young screams. A bit more bizarre, the singer claimed that her dearly departed would never help around the house and often mocked the movie The Conjuring. But perhaps the moment it all came crumbling down is when Edward was accused of cheating on Bacardi with the ghost of Marilyn Monroe. The couple eventually returned to the very church in which they had first said I do, but this time for a very different reason. Bacardi wanted a divorce in the form of an exorcism. After the ceremony was performed and the ghost of Edward expelled, the singer maintained that she now feels much more joyful than ever before and is using her newfound independence to work on herself and her music. Neat. For some reason, I am starting to think these spectrophilic relationships just aren't a good idea, because next up we have Irish native Amanda Large, who married and divorced a pirate. Ghost. Amanda, a 45-year-old female Captain Jack Sparrow impersonator, married 300-year-old deceased ex-husband Captain Jack Teague in early 2018. Amanda says when she first met Teague in 2014, she was laying in bed and one night all of a sudden felt his energy beside her. Leading up to the marriage, Amanda reported that the two were quite content and, just like any living couple, regularly participated in date nights, lovers' quarrels, and even intimate relations. When the nuptials took place, they were performed by a spiritual medium in international waters so that their commitment to one another would be considered legally binding. This was Amanda's second marriage, as she was previously married to a living man and even gave birth to 6 children during that time as well. As for Teague's dating history, it seems his past had been just as rocky, being left at the altar hundreds of years before his second attempt at love everlasting. Well, it appears Teague just can't catch a break, as after less than just 1 year into the marriage, Amanda decided to call it quits, leaving her ghostly lover for one with a little more Well, life. Amanda reported that she was very excited to enter into her first double live relationship in 12 years after leaving her first husband, and says that she has separated herself now from the ghoulish lover, as well as the dark mediums, ghosts, and occult groups that got her into the whole thing in the first place. Next on our list today, we have the story of Bessie Brown, a young woman born to a wealthy and highly respected Oklahoma family who married the ghost of her greatest love. Bessie had been previously engaged to living John Allen, and even before their nuptials took place, the pair had promised to be with and be faithful to one another as long as either one should live in this life and the next. Unfortunately, tragedy struck before the two had a chance to make it to the altar, as John was involved in a railroad accident that resulted in his death. Bessie was destroyed, but shortly after, she admitted that she had been seeing John's spirit, and she was overjoyed. So she decided to keep her promise to John, making the decision to marry his ghost. Her parents, concerned for her well-being, had Bessie examined, but specialists found no reason to believe that she'd gone insane. In fact, many members of the community where she lived actually believed what Bessie was seeing, and although they were somewhat skeptical, they supported her marriage to the deceased because of her sincerity and strong Christian character. Okay, we're gonna venture away from spectrophilics for a moment and move on to digisexuals, people who are attracted to robots and artificial intelligence models rather than humans with biological bodies and minds. In February of this year, it was revealed that Spanish artist Elisa Fremes plans to be the first person to marry an AI-powered hologram in an effort to explore the boundaries of human-AI interaction as well as its impact on society. While there is no legal union set to take place between Alicia and the AI hologram Alex, it is the artist's hope that her performative union will be attended by the public. While Alicia regularly shares photos to Instagram of her and her hologrammed husband-to-be, it's been speculated that the images are photoshopped, and that her projected companion is actually another artist or actor. While we are unsure of the details, Alicia has said in posts that hers is a romantic relationship between a woman and artificial intelligence. Next on the list, we have another story of tragic love and eternal commitment. After getting engaged, a Hindu woman's fiancé perished after falling down a well in the community. Struck with grief, the bride decided that she would go through with the wedding anyways and commit herself in body, mind, and spirit to the man she loved, regardless of his passing. To ensure the wedding would go forth, she refused to release her husband's remains for cremation until after the ceremony took place, in which she would marry his corpse. On the day of the wedding, the bride wore classic Hindu bridal attire for the pair's ceremony, and afterwards changed into an outfit more suitable to grief for the remainder of the day. Even though the wedding was highly unconventional, the bride still received gifts of clothes and utensils, as is common at weddings in Hindu tradition.
At number 5 is Kim Kardashian. I mean, have you seen how Kim Kardashian treats her kid's pet bearded lizard? That poor thing's nails are too long, it's been dolled up like a toy, and reptiles aren't dolls, they're living creatures with specific needs. And that jewelry on the lizard isn't cool, as bearded dragons like that one have a third eye on their head to sense light, not to be covered up with bling. Plus, they're also holding it wrong, which is just asking for trouble. Now, if Kim thinks it's fine to treat a lizard like a living doll, then it's not a leap to think that she might have a thing for reptiles. At number 4 is Chicago West. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, as Chicago West, the daughter of Kim Kardashian, fiercely handles snakes during a family vacation. Many see it as bravery, but what if there's more to it? Conspiracy theorists, like me, speculate that this fearless act around reptiles could indicate something deeper, a link to the mysterious lizard people. Some say that these creatures have the ability to communicate with reptiles effortlessly, making them more comfortable around them than the average person. Now, this little Chicago's ease with snakes could be more than just bravery. It could be a sign of her connection to the lizard people. This behavior aligns with the theory that these shape-shifting beings walk among us disguised as regular people. Perhaps this isn't fearlessness, but her true nature hidden in plain sight. At number 3 is Paul McCartney. The thing about conspiracy theories is once they latch onto something, they stick like glue. And in the case of Paul McCartney, there's this wild theory floating around that he actually was unalived in a car crash and was replaced by a lookalike. Fans went bonkers, scouring the Beatles songs for hidden messages, claiming that they found clues hinting at his demise. But McCartney himself debunked it in an interview, saying that he's just been laying low, not pushing up daisies. Now, of course, that's what a clone would say, especially if that clone was a lying reptilian alien. At number 2 is Justin Bieber. One of the most notorious reptilian humanoids today is Justin Bieber. He's been suspected of being a lizard for a long time, but he made a huge mistake when he visited Australia for his Purpose tour. He performed in Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, and Perth, and it was in Perth that he revealed his true nature to hundreds of fans who saw him transform into a giant reptile. A news article from Perth now reported the shocking event, but then quickly deleted it. Did Bieber's team censor the story? Most likely. The article said that the police were called by terrified fans who witnessed a, quote, disgusting colored scales covering Bieber's body. And at number 1 is Queen Elizabeth II. One of the most convincing evidence for this is the Queen of England, Elizabeth II. She is actually a lizard from another planet, and I'm not the only one who thinks so. David Icke, a writer, speaker, and famous conspiracy theorist, has exposed her and her family as reptilian hybrids in a 1991 interview. Icke also believes that the Queen is part of the Illuminati, a secret society of the most powerful people on Earth who control the world. They're all reptilian descendants, including all the royal families of the world. And don't you think it's suspicious that her name is Elizabeth? I mean, Lizzie for short. Isn't Lizzie also short for lizard? There are real shape-shifting reptilians disguised as regular people, and they're everywhere. They have infiltrated the highest levels of government, the media, entertainment, and even religion. They're manipulating us with their mind control and their advanced technology, and they are preparing for a global takeover. Sorry, I just blanked out for 10 minutes. Nothing I told you was real. Reptile people don't exist, and please continue living out your lives as usual. At number 10 is Mark Zuckerberg. In a Facebook Live Q&A, Mark Zuckerberg faced an unexpected question. Are you secretly a lizard? The 32-year-old billionaire dismissed it as very silly and saying he's definitely not a lizard. Classic denial, am I right? But here's the thing, people talking about his pauses and gestures as signs of hiding something. Like, for example, right after denying the allegations of being a lizard, he licked his lips. As if that doesn't warrant the need for a more thorough investigation, I don't know what does. But this isn't just about Marky Z. There are these conspiracy theories floating around for ages. I mean, people pointing fingers at politicians, celebs, even claiming that they've seen weird things like their eyes changing or their skin glitching. Like, many believe that lizard people are out there manipulating us, pulling the strings behind closed doors. I mean, it's all dismissed here as funny or silly when someone's being asked about their reptilian roots, but these theories keep resurfacing. Who knows, maybe there's more to it, but I guess we'll never know for sure. At number 9 is Prime Minister John Key. So the former Prime Minister of New Zealand was forced to confront the idea of being a lizard person after a citizen actually went out of their way to file an official Information Act request. Here's the Prime Minister's response, quote, "To the best of my knowledge, no. Having been asked that question directly, I've taken the unusual step of not only seeing a doctor, but a vet, and both confirmed that I am not a reptile." Key said, according to New Zealand's news hub, "So I'm certainly not a reptile. I've never been in a spaceship, nor in outer space, and my tongue is not overly long either." Hate that I have to be the one to break it to you, but he's totally lying. This is exactly what a lizard person trying to blend in would say. I mean, think about it, the whole vet and doctor thing could be a cover-up. Maybe they're in on it too. I mean, how else do you explain it? Reptiles taking human form, infiltrating our society, pulling strings from behind closed doors like a sci-fi movie. But listen, that quote he gave, denying spaceships and a long tongue, that's just a diversion tactic. Lizard people are smarter than that. They won't give away the game that easily. There's more to this than meets the eye, mark my words. Okay, if you're enjoying this video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Most Amazing, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is Avril Lavigne. Avril Lavigne, the lizard queen? That's what some folks out there swear by. Picture this. He was a skater boy and she was replaced by a clone. Yeah, that's right. Avril Lavigne, the punk princess, was allegedly swapped out for a clone named Melissa. It sounds wild, but this whole lizard people thing isn't sci-fi anymore. The Avril Lavigne-Melissa switch, some say that because the real Avril was having such a tough time with the whole fame gig, so they snuck in a clone to take her place. Conspiracy theorists point to clothing choices, facial gestures, even song lyrics searching for clues. Some even claim there's a photo with Melissa scribbled on Avril's hand. At number 7 is the former Defense Secretary, Donald Rumsfeld. There's this odd moment back in 2011 on a radio show when Donald Rumsfeld, the former Defense Secretary, got grilled by comedian Louis C.K. as Louis was set on questioning Rumsfeld about being a lizard alien. Got super awkward because Rumsfeld dodged the questions and didn't confirm nor deny anything. Now this incident fueled the fire for those who are convinced that reptilian creatures are real. Some believe it's a cover-up while others think it's just a ridiculous idea, but hey, for those who buy into this lizard people thing, that interview was pure gold, feeding their theories about these wild, secretive reptiles living among us. At number 6 is Dalton McGuttney, former Ontario Premier. Now, we've gone through a denial and a neither confirmation nor denial, but this dude actually comes out and confirms it. See, back in 2003, during the Ontario elections, there was this wild news release. The campaign for Ernie Eves, his opponent, called McGutney an evil reptilian kitten eater from another planet. But hold on, because the twist comes in later, because after McGutney won and became the premier, he didn't deny the accusation. No, instead, he responded with a tongue-in-cheek remark, "That's Premier Evil Reptilian Kitten Eater from Another Planet, thank you very much." I mean, come on, what kind of response is that if there's no truth to it? He admitted it! I mean, directly. It makes you wonder what else he's hiding.
Paul Amadeus Dalia was a Swiss teacher who in 1921 fell into a coma thanks to some serious health issues. When he woke up, he claimed to have lived an entire year, but not in his own time. Dalia said he had woken up in the year 3906, inhabiting the life of a man named Andreas Nora. At first, he couldn't make sense of what he was seeing. Towering skyscrapers, flying cars. He also described using a glowing device which let him access all the world's knowledge. Sounds a lot like a smartphone. During this year, Dalia documented everything he saw. He described humanity struggling through overpopulation, environmental disasters, and wars for the first few centuries of the second millennium. He wrote about attempts to colonize Mars, which ultimately failed, and then a catastrophic nuclear war in 2309 that forced humanity to rethink its way of living. From that chaos, though, a global government rose to power, eventually leading to a golden age around the year 3400. Before he died, he handed his diaries to a former student who translated them and found extremely specific details about the language, the technology, and the structure of that society. The world building was on point. Obviously, this could have been an elaborate dream, but his notes are still considered by some to be one of the most compelling cases of possible time travel. Alright, this one's pretty silly. I never said these had to be convincing. I just said these were people who claim to be from the future, alright? In 2018, a guy named Alexander Smith popped up in a few videos on Apex TV, YouTube, claiming he was a time traveler. According to him, the CIA sent him back in 1981 on a secret mission to the year 2118. He never really explained what the mission was, but apparently when he came back, the agency was not thrilled. Smith said he had to go into hiding because the CIA has supposedly been hunting him ever since. As for evidence, he just brought along a blurry photo of a futuristic city, which he claims he took in 2118. He says it's blurry because of the effects of time travel, which kind of sounds like a writer doing a shoddy patch job in a plot hole. Smith also said he'd been holding on to it since the 80s because the world just wasn't ready to see it yet. But by 2018, he apparently decided it was finally time. The guy also talks in this constantly wavering Americanish accent. It's kind of strange. I guess it's meant to be a future voice, kind of an amalgamation of different accents, maybe. Back in 2006, a Swedish guy named Håkan Nordqvist came forward with a very strange story. He said he was fixing a leak under his sink when suddenly the sink moved away on its own. Before he knew it, a blinding white light had surrounded him, and the next thing he knew, he was outside, staring at an older version of himself. Instead of freaking out, the two Hakans had a friendly chat, and Hakan even recorded the conversation on his phone. One of the big standouts of the video was their matching tattoos. Now, the footage of the older Hakan's face was blurry, and the tattoos looked way too fresh to belong to someone supposedly decades older. On top of that, there was no explanation for how he got back to his own time. But eventually, it came out the whole thing was actually a publicity stunt. Hakan's story was part of a marketing campaign for the Swedish insurance company AMF, promoting their pension plans using the theme of time travel. In 2017, a mysterious man known only as Noah showed up online claiming he was a time traveler from 2030. What stood out to many people was that he'd apparently passed a lie detector test. Noah said he'd traveled multiple times in the past but was stuck in the present. Noah gave a detailed, if bizarre, description of how he time traveled. He'd step into a giant dome with electronic devices all over his body, which supposedly pushed him through time while feeling like he was being electrocuted. He also took anti-aging pills to stay the same age while hopping around, claiming he was actually 50 but looks 25 thanks to these pills. And of course, Noah also dropped a long list of predictions for the future. He said humans would reach Mars in 2028, time travel would be discovered, Bitcoin would grow in popularity, electric cars would match petrol ones in speed, and multiple forms of cancer would be cured. He claimed contact with aliens, said that Instagram would die out, and that Martin Luther King Jr.'s granddaughter would become US president. Noah eventually admitted it was all fake. Noah, whose face had always been blurred out, finally showed his face and said his real name was Jason. He said he was being bullied at school, was struggling with his identity, and didn't have any friends. He became obsessed with YouTube and started emailing Apex TV pretending to be a time traveler. One of his videos got posted, and then overnight he became internet famous. Jason admitted it quickly turned into an addiction for him. Even the lie detector test he passed was just a mix of him believing his own story, being medicated to stay calm, and that the test itself was kind of low quality. Just goes to show how, lie detector tests, not always the most reliable. Jason ended his video by admitting he's not a great actor, but people still believed him, urging viewers to keep an open mind. Back in 2017, Wyoming cops had a pretty unusual call. A man named Bryant was wandering the streets completely intoxicated, insisting he was a time traveler from 2048. He said he'd traveled back to warn everyone about an alien invasion set to hit in 2018. He then demanded to speak directly with the, quote, president of the town to personally deliver his warning. I can't fathom why, but the cops did not take him seriously. Instead of preparing for this alien apocalypse, Bryant was arrested and slapped with a public intoxication charge. Back in 1932, two German reporters, J. Bernard Hutton and Joachim Brandt, were visiting the Hamburg-Altona shipyards. Everything seemed normal until suddenly bombs started raining down around them. They rushed into a vehicle and managed to escape terrified. As chaotic as the situation was, though, they did manage to snap some photos. But when the film was developed, the images were just blank. They told their editor about what had happened, but he just brushed them off. After all, they had no proof. In 1943, though, Hutton was flipping through a newspaper and his jaw hit the floor. The Royal Air Force had carried out an air raid on that same shipyard from 11 years before, and the destruction matched exactly what he and Brandt described all those years earlier. Back in 1901, two British academics, Charlotte Ann Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain, were visiting Versailles for some sightseeing, but things got weird. They claimed that while wandering the palace grounds, they suddenly found themselves somewhere entirely different, like they'd slipped back in time to the late 18th century. They said they saw people, including members of Louis XVI's court and Marie Antoinette herself. They also said they walked through gardens that didn't match the maps they had, and that there were people in period clothing going about their daily routines. They were so convinced of what they'd seen that they later wrote a book about it called An Adventure, using pseudonyms to avoid being publicly humiliated for how strange it all sounded. And this is one of the earliest recorded stories of what people now call a time slip, where reality seems to fold back on itself.